So as usual, I'm going to reiterate things that I've already said 1,000 times. And of course, I'm going to start with Gilgamesh and him setting the standards for many heroes that come after him. And then when we get into the modern world, we also have the anti-hero who does not embody these heroic and courageous aspects that Gilgamesh and other heroes have continued to establish over the centuries. And we see Theseus, we see Perseus, we see Oedipus, who differs from those other heroes. And then in the more modern age, I talked about Arthur and how he and Oedipus have so many similarities. Now I'm going to fast forward into the really modern world in 1977, as a matter of fact, which is still modern. And I want to talk about the Star Wars goes beyond a trilogy. What do you call 6 movies? Is that a sexology? At any rate, talk about Star Wars. Now, Star Wars was made by the Lucas guy, and he really heavily relied on Joseph Campbell in the archetype of the hero. And when I say he relied on him, I mean he really relied on him. There are also other aspects within Star Wars that reflect world religions, especially Taoism and the concept of the force that surrounds us all, because the Taoists say the Tao is around us and permeates us, just like the force does. But this is not a world's religion class, and I'm not going to relate more about how Star Wars incorporates those aspects of Taoism and other religions, but how Luke and Anakin Skywalker, come Darth Vader, fit into the heroic mode. And I'm going to start out with Luke because the first movies concerned Luke, and that was who we learned about first. First of all, Luke Skywalker. He is raised apart from his parents. Now, of course, he's told a lie about his parents, and he thinks that his father and mother are both dead, when indeed it is just his mother, Padme, who is dead. But he is raised apart from his parents, and he is a special child. Arthur was a special child. And even though Oedipus was sent away, Oedipus was a special child. They are all fated or destined to do certain things in their life. And Oedipus did do a great thing. He killed killed the Sphinx, or he outwitted the Sphinx. Arthur, of course, united Britain and is supposed to live again. Luke Skywalker was fated to overcome the evil empire. But Luke, raised apart from his parents, just like other heroes. Luke has many sidekicks. You could consider Obi-Wan a sidekick, and of course R2-D2 and 3CPO, big sidekicks. Han Solo, even Princess Leia. So he has a plethora of sidekicks. And Luke goes on a quest. And he goes on a quest to help Leia, to find himself, and to ultimately destroy the Death Star. And he does all of those things. Fast forward into the future, even though it's really the past, and you have Anakin Skywalker. Now, Anakin Skywalker really fits into the hero mode. Number one, he is conceived of a virgin. We see this in Christ. We see this in Mithra. We see this even in the birth of Perseus, because Danae is impregnated by a stream of gold, which probably represents urine, because the ancients had a hard time knowing the difference between semen and urine, and so the stream of gold. Sorry for that bluntness, but it's there. But at any rate, the stream of gold, that may have represented that, but it didn't make any difference because she was impregnated by magical means, and Perseus was a virgin birth. So Anakin Skywalker follows in those modes. He is, in essence, part deity. And I say in essence because he really didn't have a God as a father, but he is still has those types of images that are associated with a deity impregnating a mortal woman. And so Anakin Skywalker doesn't know who his father is raised in circumstances, he wasn't raised among royalty, etc., etc. And then when he gets older, he starts to he goes out on a quest in order to find out who he is, and he becomes a Jedi Knight. Now, other aspects of the hero come in with Anakin at this point. He marries Padme and finds out that she is fated to die. And so his hubris overcomes his common sense, and he thinks that he can overcome fate and prevent her death. And the very actions that he takes in order to prevent that brings the action up into being. This is what happens with Priam and Paris. It is what happens with Yocasta and Laos when they send Oedipus off to die. You simply cannot overcome your fate. And again, we're going to talk about that next week, and I'm going to be quiet about that. And then Anakin goes beyond what happens to Luke, because Anakin is a dying and resurrected, and again, I hesitate to use the word deity, but he certainly dies and resurrects. However, he is not a corn king. He is not Arthur. He is not Oedipus, because his death does not benefit people. He is burned, and then he is resurrected as Darth Vader, and he has changed. He undergoes a huge metamorphosis and goes from being Anakin Skywalker really, truly, totally into Darth Vader. We see transformations of other deities who have died, and they don't go over to the dark side. As a matter of fact, they come out wiser and with more knowledge than they had before they died. Darth Vader might have more knowledge, but he really does not have wisdom. He does not become a sage. And he does not die he might die in order to benefit Padme, but he does not die in order to benefit a large amount of people. Now, at the end of all of these movies, he does. And he redeems himself. So, he does finally gain the knowledge the wisdom that he should have had, and he redeems himself. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot more time in talking about these two sets of heroes, Anakin and Luke Skywalker, because hopefully most of you are familiar with these movies, and you can put the pieces of the puzzle together yourself. But I do want to point out one thing that occurred in the original movie, and that was the battle between Darth Vader, and his offspring, Luke Skywalker. And of course, we all know that famous line where Darth Vader says, "Luke, I am your father." And he is Luke Skywalker's father. This, again, goes back and relates to the Arthurian myth, because whom does Arthur fight? He fights his son. But the roles are reversed. Darth Vader is the bad guy fighting the young good guy. In the Arthurian myth, it is Arthur, the good guy, fighting his son, Mordred, the young bad guy. Now, Mordred has been warped by his by his mother, Morgana. And okay, I'm not going to go into Morgana. I'm digressing enough here. But again, Mordred's hatred of his father after being tainted by Morgana is no excuse. Just like Oedipus's lack of knowledge that Yocasta was his mother, and Arthur being fooled into sleeping with his sister, that's still no excuse. He's still responsible for himself. But we have this role reversal in the fight between the father and the son. If we were to look this on a broader image, broader scope, Robert Graves would say that this represents the younger son deposing the father or the older king, perhaps not even a blood relative, in order to become the new king, the new corn king. Because the king, according to Graves, was sacrificed for the fertility of the land. And Graves talks about this in The White Goddess. He talks about it in his book of Greek myths. We see this in other modern depictions. Mary Renault's The Bull from the Sea and The King Must Die both talk about how the old king must die, the young king will take his place, and the old king must die for the fertility of the land, and his blood is shed even literally on the land in order to feed it and to make it fertile. Okay, I think I am finished with Luke and Anakin Skywalker, but if you examine many other modern tales, you will see these same archetypes. You will see the child growing up away from parents. That is the special child who is destined for greatness. That child might have a tragic flaw. Anakin Skywalker certainly has a tragic flaw. We don't see it so much in Luke. Goes on a quest in order to find self and or to find greatness. And the hero usually succeeds in that, but then does not always die a happy life. Jason and Jason of the Argonauts did not die a happy man. Theseus underwent many trials after he killed the Minotaur. Perseus settled down with Andromeda. He's almost the exception. But by examining many modern tales, they draw from these old myths. In Star Wars was deliberate, totally deliberate. It wasn't by accident. There was an examination of the archetypes. And so these old tales continue to live on and will continue to live on, in my opinion, for many centuries to come. And maybe it won't be a deliberate continuation, but they are embedded into our culture. Whether or not they're embedded into our psyches, but they are embedded into our culture and cultures throughout the world. Okay.